loving have no right to break. And I'm over that mountain as far as I can see. And I'm over that mountain as far as I can see. Some other man got my woman sick, on some blues got me. Had to fold my arms as I slowly walked away. Had to fold my arms, I slowly walked away. Out up this one, my biscuit roll alone. Alright, that was If I Had Possession Over Judgment Day by Robert Johnson. We're continuing on in Robert Johnson's lessons in conjunction with my Robert Johnson Volume 2 ebook, which is now available on my website. Check out the link in the information settings. Okay, so today we're going to be discussing the song In and Out. If you haven't already, check out my Traveling Riverside Blues lesson, which I released a few weeks earlier. Traveling Riverside and If I Had Possession Over Judgment Day are constructed similarly together. So if you've watched Traveling Riverside, this song is going to appear much easier to you. All right. So to begin, a good place to start is having an acoustic guitar available with you. Playing electric for this purpose is probably not a good idea. What I like to recommend is using a brass slide, especially in Delta blues music. A glass one is more for finesse soloing, but in Delta blues music, a brass kind of exemplifies the rugged, tough sound, and it pairs nicely with the music of Robert Johnson and folks like Son House and whatnot. I also recommend using plastic finger picks. This is the finger picks are sort of your amplifier of the guitar. Without them, you don't get as much of this distinct sound and the crisp tonality. So I have a thumb, index, and middle finger picks, all plastic. This helps me a lot in playing this music. So if you are unsure about finger picking styles, check out my videos. Beginning finger picking styles 1 through 4, and there's also free tablature on my website in conjunction with those. So, thank you so much for following along, subscribing to me, and following my mission in preserving this great music. This is going to be another fantastic lesson, so I will cut to the chase here. So, If I Had Possession Over Judgment Day is played in Spanish tuning, open G tuning. But in this instance, it's played in open A tuning because Robert Johnson has tuned his guitar to a higher pitch here. So if you are on E standard tuning right now, your top string, we're gonna tune up to each other, and we're gonna match our tone exactly to what we hear in the original recording by Robert Johnson. That way, if you wanted to follow along with him, you could. So the top string is going to be in E, so no change from an E standard tuning. So E, go ahead and play that on your end. So my 5th string is going to be in A, again no change from E standard tuning. My 4th string is going to be in E. It's going from a D to an E. My 3rd string is going to be an A, so you're going from a G to an A. My 2nd string is going to be a C sharp. You're going from a B to a C sharp. And finally, my bottom string is going to be an E. So when you strum down, it's going to be an A chord. Okay, so now we're in tune together, And as I stated earlier, what you want to have on your right hand, the position on the right hand is you want to create this pattern with your right hand. You cock it this way. Your thumb, the outer lining of your hand, the outer lining of the palm of your hand is going to be resting above the 6th string. Your thumb is going to be nestled atop the 5th string. And your thumb is going to be responsible for playing continuous bass lines. Okay? And your index and middle finger are going to be plucking upwards on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd strings. And you're going to be creating a pinching motion together. A pinch motion. Okay. So, and then there's going to be alternating nature of playing notes here. So you'll see how it all ravels further on in the lesson. Applying the slide, as I've demonstrated in earlier lessons, is that when you're sliding, you don't want to press too hard. You want to have at least some, release some tension here. Gently press the slide over the strings and just with finesse toggle back and forth across the fretboard from the beginning to the end of that fretboard. Like a gradual push on the strings. Not a hard clench, but some relaxed tension there. Okay, so those are the basic components of finger picking discipline and application with the slide. We are tuned together. That means that we can go ahead and start looking at the introduction. Okay, so we're going to look at the introduction here, which is very typical of Johnson's style and open G tuning, Spanish tuning, and it's going to sound like this. Alright, so in order to play that, what really helps in following along is having the actual ebook in front of you. I have it laid out crystal clear in guitar tablature. Every portion is broken out. So if you want to see the stylings in my ebook, check out my free downloads across some of the other artists that I cover, and it shows you the exact format of the way that the ebook is laid out. Crystal clear, easy to understand tablature, coupled by detailed descriptions of each part, accompanied by lyrics, everything you need to know to learn the song. So the first measure here that we're looking at is you are going to position the right hand, and we're going to be you're going to position the right hand like this, and the index and middle finger are going to be plucking on the 1st and 2nd strings, and your slide is going to be positioned lightly over the 11th and 12th frets. So you're going to play a succession of 9 notes. And it's going to be 3 times of this sequence, which I'm going to play here. There's 3 notes. You're going to lead into this. Okay, we're going to play that part. In order to lead into that, you're going to start by fretting over the 1st and 2nd strings on the 11th fret. You're going to, with the index finger, pluck. And you're going to slide into the 12th fret, maintaining that same position over the 1st and 2nd strings, and you're going to pluck twice after that. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm alternating with my index and middle finger. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He plays that 9 times. Okay, so he plays that 9 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then when he's on that 9th note, he's going to play this number. He's going to slide from the 12th fret all the way to the 3rd, 2nd, 1st frets and open, all on the 1st and 2nd strings. And he's going to play that pretty fast. So the combination will sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You're pulling off. It's a gradual pull off. into an open chord on the first and second string. And that's that first introductionary piece. And I'm playing that all with my index and middle finger. Okay, so now moving on to the second measure, he plays this sequence. And this is something similarly to what we discussed in Traveling Riverside Blues. So a typical turnaround chords here in the bass portions, the bass strings, is Johnson is going to be chording the top string on the 3rd fret with the index finger, and his middle finger is going to be fingering the 4th string on the 3rd fret. And with the thumb, you're going to be playing the top 3 strings. 1, 2, 3. As a chord. So he plays this, it's a turnaround, a wind down, starting on the 3rd fret, maintaining this fingering. He plays this sequence 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then he goes over to the 2nd fret, maintaining the same chording, and he plays that 3 times. Then he goes over to the 1st fret, maintaining the same positioning, plays that once, and then he pulls off and plays the open string, the top string, 5 times. So that sequence will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And it's a very fluid structure here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So after he has this wind down, he's with the thumb playing the top string open, and he's playing this about, there's 5 notes here open, and after the 5th note he finds the bottom string on the 5th fret and he pinches with the slide. And that's where he ends the measure there. So in all, it will sound like this. It's a very fast motion there. So that's just the introduction, and now we're going to go into the first verse where he starts his singing, and leading up, it's a transition from the introduction. After this pinch, he'll lead up into this first into this 4th position chord on the 5th fret. He'll lead into it by playing the 5th, 4th, and 3rd strings open. And he's going to play that about 8 times after the introduction. So to put it in perspective, it will sound like this. If I had possession. So it's that transitionary piece. He's still remaining in the open chords. And I'll play that really slowly before we move on to the first verse. So, coming from the introduction. If I had possession. And I'll play that faster. If I had possession. So it's this transitionary piece played with the thumb. It's this build-up. This whole song is like a build-up before he gets into those powerful slide chords. So that's what we're going to look at here in the first verse. Alright, so similarly to what we discussed in Traveling Riverside Blues, in the first verse he starts to sing with the slide. It'll sound like this. If I had possession of a judgment day, if I had possession of a judgment day. All right. So this song is, as you can hear, very difficult to sing. Johnson is singing in a higher octave, and it's a song I shy away from playing. It's excellent, but you really have to get the singing right. It's too high for me to sing. I would recommend down tuning your guitar to like open F sharp tuning or open G tuning. Open A might be a little too high. All right, so in studying the opening verse, like I discussed in the earlier segment, it's this playing this lead-in, these open chords. If I had possession, this transition is key. And what you're going to do is you're going to transition from this open chord into a fretting with the slide over a bar fret over the 5th fret. And that's going to encompass the 4th, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st strings. Even the 5th string. And here you're going to slide persuasively. So it's in this transition, that's essentially what he's doing. He's staying on the 5th fret for about 7 to 8 strums. And it's going to sound like this. So I'll lead in with this introduction. If I had possession. So again, notice when I say if I had, where it falls. If I had. When he says the word had, he's already sliding over that 5th fret. So it's whatever it is, 7 to 8 strums. If I had possession. All right, and after he says the word possession, he kind of pulls off a little bit, plays 3 strums on the open chord before he goes back into that 5th fret. So it's going to sound like this. If I had possession of a judgment day. So you're building up on that 5th fret. You're sliding predominantly on that 5th fret, going back and forth from the 5th to the 4th fret. If I had possession of a judgment day. So there's essentially 2 parts in there. The first part, 5th fret, and then you slide off a little bit, and then when he starts singing, over judgment. Over judgment. He's going from the 5th to the 4th fret back to the 5th fret. Over judgment. And then when he says the word day, he's pulling off on a sequence from the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st frets before resolving to an open slide off on the open chords. So that sequence altogether is if I had possession of a judgment day. And I'll go one more time a little slower. So it's if I had possession of a judgment day. And you have to pick it up in speed. This whole song is played relatively fast. So that's that first verse, pretty straightforward and easy. And again, it's emphasizing sliding over the 5th fret. And remember not to clench down as hard. So that's that first verse, and then he goes into this characteristic, famous riff that we've discussed in Traveling Riverside Blues, which will sound like this. So I'm going a little faster there, but we'll break it down. I'll play it a little slower. Plays that over and over throughout the song. So this riff is basically broken down into 8 notes. So we're going to discuss the first 4 notes. And the first 4 notes are going to sound like this. You're going to play everything predominantly with the thumb over the sequence. And the riff is going to be based entirely on a combination of open strings and a little chording here with the slide on the 3rd fret over the 5th, 4th, and 3rd strings. It's just like a combination, right? So that's the area we need to be in. So the first 4 notes of that combination will sound like this. And what he's doing here is with the thumb, the first 2 notes you're going to play the 5th and 4th strings open, 1, 2, 1, 2, and then you're going to take your slide and you're going with the thumb pressing a slide sequence over the 4th and 3rd strings, and then pulling off on the open string on the 3rd string. So those are the other 2 notes. So 4 notes in all will sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the other 8 notes will sound like this. And that's the other half of that riff. So the other 4 notes will sound like this. You're going to play the 5th string open, then you're going to play the 3rd string open at perfect octave. 1, 2 with the thumb, and then you're going to slide over the 5th and 4th strings with the slide, like that, and then you're going to play the 3rd string open. So those 4 notes will sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the 8 notes together will sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then gradually build yourself with speed. So that's the main riff. And once you get it in a loop, it gets pretty easy. Except if I had possession over Judgment Day, he actually later on he actually plays the 3rd fret twice, and you'll hear it throughout the recording. It's something that reappears in the second part of that. But that's a pretty easy riff to get going. And then when I play it, I like to incorporate kind of percussive palm muting patterns. So I play it a little bit differently. I play it a little bit differently to achieve the kind of percussive elements and effects. But how I've demonstrated it is just as easy to follow along with the original recording. So that's that riff. And then in the second verse, as he continues, he starts playing over the 5th fret again. If I had possession over judgment day. Back to that riff. And then in the second part of the riff, he sneaks in playing twice on the 3rd fret. And so, like, for example, I talked about the first 4 notes sounding like this. It's going to be now 5 notes, and it's going to sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you'll hear it in the recording. So here's the regular riff. And then here is the additional note that appears later on in the song, or here in the second verse. He plays it twice, and you will hear it, you'll notice it in the original recording. So that's a key difference between Traveling Riverside Blues, where that does not appear. Well, If I Had Possession Over Judgment Day, it appears like that. Alright, so we've got that, everything laid out in that second verse. And now we're going to move on to the 5 position, so the turnaround in the song, which sounds like this. So, and it's in the portion of the song where he goes, Lord, that woman that I'm loving, have no right to pray. That woman I be loving, have no right to pray. And it's kind of similar to what we discussed in Traveling Riverside Blues. You're only going to be playing notes on the 5th string with the slide in this sequence. Except that in Traveling Riverside Blues, he starts off on the 5th fret, 5th string. Well, here in If I Had Possession Over Judgment Day, you're starting on the 7th fret, 5th string to begin. And he's going to play in there a combination of 8 notes. Here on the 7th fret, he's going to start singing, Lord, the woman that I'm loving, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Lord, the woman I'll be loving. With the thumb, you're playing and sliding over the 7th fret, 5th string. Lord, the woman I'll be loving. And then he shifts over to the 5th fret, 5th string. And he plays that 4 times. Would have no, would have no. And then when he says the part right to pray, he goes back to the 7th fret, right to 3rd fret, 5th string, back to the 7th fret, pray. And then he plays the open string 5th string. So it can be played very fluidly and loosely, not note for note, but the idea here is that a bulk of that riff is happening on the 7th fret, 5th string. So it's Lord, that woman I be loving, I have no right to pray. And that's the tricky part at the end of that is, again, I'll go real slow here from the beginning. Lord, that woman I be loving would have no right to pray. Right to pray. Right to pray is going to feature once on the 3rd fret, 5th string. So it's a pretty straightforward example. And again, I'll play it one last time. Lord, that woman I be loving would have no right to pray. You're ending on the open string on the 5th string. Yep. So that's the turnaround arrangement. And right after he plays that, he goes back into this riff. So that riff is always going to reappear in between the verses. Alright, so now let's take a little break and we're going to go over the second verse, which is very different than what we've discussed so far. Alright, so now we're going to discuss the second stanza in the song, and the portion where he goes, "And I went to the mountain looking as far as I could see." You'll notice the characteristic high sliding pitch that's going to be happening on the 12th fret on the first and second strings. And I looked to the mountain as far as I could see. And I went to the mountain as far as I could see. And that's what we're going to be talking about here. So, very straightforward and easy to understand. And Traveling Riverside Blues is something similar, except that he was playing over the second and third strings. So, say I got one Pittsburgh playing on into Tennessee. Well, in this instance, he's shifting down 2 strings, and you're going to be sliding. It's going to be a combination of 4 notes here. So the portion where we go, I'm going to be playing that all with my index and middle finger, flicking over the first and second strings. The slide, you're going to play a combination of 4 notes. The first note going to be on the 11th fret, the first and second strings. You're going to slide, and you're going to slide into the 12th fret, first and second strings, and you're going to play 3 times there. So it's a combination of 4 notes. It can sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And he plays that a combination of 4 times. And then in this portion he's singing, and I went to the mountain as far as I could see. I cannot sing it. The pitch is very high, but that's what he's doing. Again, it's, and I went to the mountain as far as I could see. So after he plays that combination 4 times, he's sliding from the 12th all the way to the 3rd, 2nd, 1st open strings, what we talked about in the introduction. And I went to the mountain as far as I could see. When in the portion where he's singing C, he's sliding and pulling off. And then you're going to be playing those open chords. Then he goes back into the riff structure. And he stays there a little longer. And so if you follow along with the original recordings, you'll just have to adjust how many times he does that. So I have it laid out on the tablature exactly to what you hear in the original recording. So again, he sings that part and then he does it again a second time. And I went to the mountain as far as I could see. Alright, so he continues on in the song there. So I'm going to go ahead and flip the page here. And like I said, I'm following along exactly to the way I have it laid out in the ebook. So yeah, he continues with that riff. And then he goes back into that 5 position, which we talked about, sliding over the 5th string, the individual notes on the 5th string over the 7th and 5th and 3rd frets. And in this portion he goes, some other man got my woman, see, a lonesome blues got me. And again it's staying on that 7th fret. Some other man's got my woman, see, lonesome blues got me. Very straightforward and easy, and he does that 5 position quite often throughout the other stanzas. Then he goes back into that riff. Alright, so now we're going to look at the third stanza, which is very different from the other two stanzas. If I Had Possession Over Judgment Day is a very complicated work. It's much more difficult than playing Traveling Riverside Blues, but we'll go over each stanza one by one. So we'll take a little break before we go on to that. Alright, so now we're going to talk about the third stanza, and it's very different and very interesting. But I'll play it here shortly after this, the continuing on the riff from the previous stanza. So I'll just play that whole transition. Some other man got my woman sick, on an lonesome blues got me. Back to that riff. Had to roll my arms and I slowly walked away. It's that weird portion. Had to roll my arms and I slowly walked away. So that's what we'll talk about here. And he's essentially playing three downstrokes. They're three half notes of the down strum on the open chord here in this stanza, and it's a part that's very fluid and breaks all sense of timing. But it's played like this, and he goes, and I rolled and I told and I won the whole night. It's three half note strums, and that's where he's singing. And I rolled and I tumbled and I cried the whole night. Alright, so there's three strums there, and I rolled and I tumbled and I three strums. And then after that he does a combination of three strums that are fast. And that's playing over, you're playing over the 5th, 4th, 3rd, and 2nd strings, all of this, on the open chord with the thumb. So there's a combination of 6 notes, right? And the first 3 notes are half notes, so it's, and I rolled and I tumbled and I cried the whole night long. So there's 6 notes in all. The first are the 3. 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6. And it's played very fast. It's very hard to get the timing down, but it's kind of what he's doing here, and I'll try to play it again slowly. Again, it's, and I rolled and I tumbled and I cried the whole night long. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's a fluid piece here. You're breaking the timing in a way, yet being in timing. So it's and I rolled and I tumbled and I cried all night long. So after he plays this is where he's singing cried the whole night long. And I rolled and I tumbled and I cried all night long. Cried the whole night long. Very difficult, but still fluid in nature. And after he plays that, he plays this very fast slide combination that it becomes a hybrid into that riff that we've talked about. It's going to sound like this. Alright, and that appears right after he plays that combination. So all together it'll sound like this. And I rolled and I tumbled and I cried all night long. And that portion is played very fast here, and it will sound like this. And what you're gonna do here is you're going to find the 2nd string on the 12th fret, and you're gonna slide with the index finger. You're going to individually pluck on that 2nd string with a slide over it, and you're gonna play that 3 times. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And then you're gonna jump up to the 3rd string on the 12th fret. Play that for your 4th note. 1, 2, 3, 4. And after that, he'll slide from the 12th fret to the 3rd, 2nd, 1st, and open string on the 3rd string. So that combination will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alright, it's a very difficult piece, but you can get it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then after he slides off on that 3rd string, he starts immediately playing that riff. But in this case, he's playing that additional note on the 3rd fret. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then back into that riff. So from the beginning it's, and I rolled it out to all night long. He gets into that riff combination, and it's laid out pretty easy to understand on the tablature. So then here in the next instance, he's going to be now playing these very typical chords over the 4 position, the 4 chord, and he's going to be barring. This is something that you'll play in Stones in My Pass Away, Crossroad Blues. It's this combination that I've talked about in previous videos. And in this verse he'll sing, and I rolled it out, tumbling, cried the whole night long. Yeah, and so that combination is, and that's something he plays exactly in Crossroad Blues. So we'll talk about it here. And so the combination is, you're going to lead into this bar arrangement over the 5th fret. Your index finger is going to be barring from the 4th string down. 4th, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st strings on the 5th fret, you're barring that. And that will always be barred. The thumb is going to play the alternating notes over the 7th and 8th fret on the bottom strings. Okay, so that's the essential. That index finger being barred has to be stationary at all times to play this portion. In leading up to it, though, you're going from the 3rd fret, 4th to the 5th fret. So you strike into that by playing the 3rd fret. 1, 2, 3. With one strike with the thumb, you're going from the 3rd, 4th to the 5th fret. So in one strike, you're capturing 3 notes. 1, 2, 3. And then the index finger, the bar on the 5th fret, remains stationary. And once you strike that, the thumb is going to play a combination here of 4 notes. You're gonna play. It's gonna sound like this. Okay, a combination of 4 notes here, starting with this position. I'll take away my slide for the purpose of this example. So with that bar combination, you're sliding once, and then right after you do that transitionary piece, it's going to be a combination of 4 notes. You're going to be pinching with the thumb, which is going to be plucking over the 4th string. The thumb plucks the 4th string, and your index and middle finger is going to be plucking the first and second strings, the notes that are to follow. So the 4 notes will sound like this. It will be 8th fret bottom string, 1. Then you shift the pinky to the 7th fret bottom string for the second note. 1, 2. While the index finger is barring, of course, the 5th fret at all times. And then after that, you'll take that pinky off and play the bottom string in the 5th fret, which is already being barred. So it's 1, 2, 3, and then you'll play the second string with the index finger while the 5th fret is barred. So there's 4 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the final 3 notes you'll play again on the bottom string in the 8th fret. You'll play that twice. And then you'll finish with the 5th fret bottom string. So in all, that combination will sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So all together it will be, I'll count it down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, it's hard to bar it on a guitar like this. My hands are already getting tired. So that's that combination, and it's and I rolled and I tumbled, cried the whole night long. That's where he's singing that portion. And I rolled and I tumbled and I cried the whole night long. So again, try to match that singing. So he plays that portion actually twice. Once, twice. Then back to that riff, which is riff. He plays that pretty short, and then in the 5 position here, the portion where we expect to hear, he skips that in this portion, and instead he does the same combination of chordings here, except this time in this portion he says, "Boy, I woke up this morning, I just get rolled gone." So in this case, instead of going over the 5th and 8th frets, he's just shifting down to play the 5 chord, the 5 position, where the index finger is barred over the 7th fret. And your pinky is going to be playing the notes on the 10th and 9th fret using that same melodic structure that we just talked about. So it's so you're sliding into that 7th fret starting on the 5th fret. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Boy, I got up this morning, I just get rolled gone. So after he plays that, he goes then back to that structure that we did talk about. I just get rolled gone. He's on the 5th and 8th fret in that combination sequence. And then he goes back into the riff. So that third stanza is very challenging. So I will play it from front to finish here just to kind of bring it all together. It will sound like this. And I'm really glad to that I cry all night long. And I rolled and I tumbled and cried the whole night long. Well, I got up this morning, I just get rolled gone. So that's that portion of the stanza. So now we'll talk about the fourth and the fifth stanzas, which are also kind of interesting.